Hey friends, how's it going? It's Andy here, and welcome to my mechanical keyboard rewind for 2021. This year's been pretty monumental actually for the mechanical keyboard community. So much has happened, right from Reddit, mechanical keyboard subreddit hit 1 million members there. There's been a lot of up-and-coming YouTubers who are also getting into this space. There's also gaming companies and custom keyboard studios which are investing some heavy money. So that's really exciting. So what I wanted to do in this video is to just really wrap it up and highlight some key trends that I felt were important to the hobby in 2021. So I'll be going through my top 10, some of which will be keyboards, some keycaps, and just generally some other big keyboard trends in no particular order as well. Well, let's get started and kick it off with number 10. So number 10, we have 75% boards with knobs. Now, 2021 really saw the delivery of a very incredibly hyped and a long-awaited board, which is the GMMK Pro. And that's because it came in at a really accommodating 75% layout with a rotary encoder knob for a bit of novelty. But at the same time, it was also the first time a large gaming peripherals company had come in with a keyboard kit, and at a very reasonable price actually, at 169 USD. Now, following this trend, Keychron, which is also a pretty well-known company, they also do pre-built custom keyboards. They're actually featured in one of my favorite YouTubers' videos, which is MKBHD's studio tour. You can see one of those. And also recently, interesting to see it in one of my favorite K-dramas, which is Startup. Now, Keychron released the Q1, and really similarly, it came in at a great price point, $150 for the bare bones kit, $159 if you wanted the knob. Once again, it got a lot of hype. It was pretty well received, some minor things that you had to tweak here and there, but overall, another great way for entry-level beginners to get into the hobby. Now, lastly, the third company that got into this 75% hype was Acco, and they did this through the Acco Mod 007. Came in at a same price point or similar price point to the Keychron Q1, and once again, I think it's just going to be a great option for those who are just getting into the hobby. Now, what makes these three 75% boards with knobs really interesting is, first off, they come in at a great price. Secondly, they're very accommodating layout. And thirdly, most of all, is the convenience of purchasing one of these boards. I think as of now, it's really quite easy to be able to get your hands on any of the three boards, whereas for some other like custom high-end mechanical keyboards, you're gonna have to wait months, if not up to a year, to receive those in hand. And it's really because of those three reasons that I found 75% with knobs a certified hit in 2021. Alright, number 9, the THOCKNOMENON. So this one's a little bit of a contentious topic, but let's explain how it came to be. So as the keyboard hobby grew dramatically over 2021, we found really a lot of newcomers getting into the hobby. And with that, there was a sort of noticeable shift towards a particular sound signature. And in this case, it was a very satisfyingly deep, otherwise known as thocky, sort of sound signature. And because of this, a lot of content creators this year created videos that were specifically catered towards this hype and this sound signature. And I myself was not immune to this. Even though my favorite keyboard is the Sanjo 60 or Shark 60, which has a very clacky sound signature, I ended up making a video also on the THOCK sound profile, and surprisingly, it turned out to be my most viewed video. And that did hurt a little bit to see that this video I made pretty quickly was like blowing all of my other videos out of the water, which I had invested like 10 or 20 times the amount of time into, not see the same sort of success. Well, generally speaking, the increase in interest and newcomers into the hobby was pretty welcome. There was also a bit of distaste that followed this. And that's because a lot of the newcomers into the hobby treated the thocky sound as the only sound that a good keyboard could have, which couldn't be further from the truth. And there wasn't enough respect really for other people's preferences or the variety of different sound signatures that a keyboard could have. Now, I think this issue is getting a little bit better, and that's thanks to large keyboard YouTubers highlighting that, preference is important and that there's a variety of sound signatures. So hopefully in 2022, we get a lot more open, understanding conversation and just an appreciation for all keyboards. Number 8, in-stock keyboards. So the feeling of finally receiving a mechanical keyboard at your doorstep has got to be one of the best things as a mechanical keyboard enthusiast. But on the other side of the coin, there's that undeniable pain of not knowing when it'll come. Could be 6 months, could be a year, could be more. Just have to wait for it to rock up at your doorstep one day. And now this issue does make a bit of sense because it's high-end custom keyboards that you're talking about, products that are, pretty difficult and expensive to produce, not so much in demand that they can be in production for the whole year. But the good news is that as this hobby is starting to grow, things are actually improving or changing for the better. Now in 2021, we saw a lot more of these vendors or producers doing in-stock keyboards actually. So one of the big ones was the Jelly Epoch by Owl Labs, and they sold about 700 units, and that was back in April. And then seeing the big success that came with that release, we also saw new keyboards that came into the market, and that would be the Frog TKL by Geonworks, Sanjo 60 by Monster Gear, and then the Mammoth Studio by Wutro Studio. And these are just a few that I've mentioned. And I think this is a really welcome shift from waiting for pre-orders or group buys for keyboards to an in-stock model. Now what's really interesting is though that China actually has done a hybrid model for quite some time. So what they'll do is upon release of a new keyboard or product, they'll do like a limited in-stock release of about 100 to 200 units, and that'll help them get the production up and running and also test out the sort of manufacturing for that. And then following that, there'll be the official group buy period. Now, what I do really like about this model is the fact that even though it's not perfect, it helps a lot of really eager people get their hands on the keyboard quite early in the process. At the same time, it minimizes the risk for the producer or manufacturer of the keyboards themselves. They can do a production run, but not with, excessive units and not have a supply issue on that front. But at the same time, it also helps reduce the group buy period or shorten that timeline because there's not going to be as many orders. Also because a production run's already been completed and they know what to expect from the process. And so I personally believe that this in-stock model, as well as combined with this hybrid model, will really help make this hobby much more accessible for everyone. And hopefully that in 2022 we can see much more of this. Number 7, does your keyboard or spacebar sound like this? Alright, now these videos have been absolutely all over my recommended, and I really enjoy them, and by the looks of it, you guys do as well, looking at the number of views that they have. One of the coolest things is just to be able to sit down with headphones on, just close your eyes and listen to it like it's ASMR. It's actually really cool, and being able to hear a whole variety of sound signatures, I think that's great. So here's to a lot more variety of these sound tests this year, but please lose those hard to read titles. Number 6. Budget custom options. Now, also known as the gateway to getting a mechanical keyboard addiction, budget custom options have been really on the rise in 2021. Jokes aside, it's one of the best entry points into the custom keyboard hobby because you get to really experience the whole journey of finding, creating, and then building the mechanical keyboard from start to finish, all without having to shell out a lot of money. And I just wanted to recognize these and point out 4 different entry-level mechanical keyboards that I think are, very solid options. They get rerun pretty often or are sometimes just in stock as well. So these are the KBD 67 Lite or the Iki Aurora 68 as your polycarbonate options. And then there's the Freebird 60 and the Bucket Neck 60, which are aluminium options. Now there's plenty of reviews out there for pretty much all of these keyboards, so I'll link some in the description, and if you're looking at any of these options, go check those out. Now number 5 is keycaps, particularly on the manufacturing front. Now 2021 really saw a huge rise in demand for keycaps in general, and consequently this led to keycap group buys being very popular as well. So we ended up seeing a new record actually, which is 32 group buys in total for keycaps in the month of September. Now also, if we go back and compare these results quickly, you'll notice that in 2021 the average per month was about 25, and if we compare that to the year before, the average was only about 16. Now most of these keycaps have still been manufactured by GMK, so I guess they're still holding on to their spot as the most high quality keycap producer out there. But there's been so many new providers actually this year, and that's really exciting to see because there's a lot more potential in that space as well. Now speaking of GMK, the sheer increase in just keycap demand has led to a bit of a longer turnaround time for keycap production in general. Now that, along with the pandemic and the resin shortages, hasn't been helping out the production timeline too much. Now the good news is that GMK has increased their production facility so that they can take care of this increase in demand. But as of now, the sort of turnaround time is still looking at about a year. My eye is actually on the new players that are coming into this scene, and there's actually so many. And if I just list off a few, there's Doma key, Osame keys, MW keycaps, nice PBT by Canon keys, and tomato caps. So that'll be really interesting, and I'm really just looking forward to seeing better turnaround times and better quality keycaps from the competitors. So for number 4, we have stabilizers. Now, stabilizers are one of the most worked on yet still underlooked parts of a keyboard. And when I say that, I'm referring to stabilizers that are designed well. Now, a good stabilizer is meant to sound and feel consistent and not have any rattling, especially after applying some Krytox lubricant or dielectric grease. However, what you'll find is that more often than not, after a few months, you'll have to come back to it, either fill it up again with some dielectric grease, or at worst, take the whole keyboard apart and fix the stabilizers again. I believe stabilizers deserve a spot in this top 10 because I feel like we're going through a stabilizer renaissance. Now, the Duroc V2s have really held their throne for almost a couple of years now, and they've done so without really any sort of major innovations. In terms of perfecting stabilizers, that need, I feel, has re-emerged, and the need to remove any sort of rattling to be of the essence. Because there's still so much headroom for stabilizers to improve, we've seen already a couple of new players come into the scene and actually bring out their stabilizers. And these are TX stabs, Gateron stabs, our lab stabilizers with their liquid metal wires, and of course the famous Stabies. Now, I think these stabilizers will become much more discussed and reviewed in 2022 as they start rolling out to more countries. Now, for number 3, we've got the LK67, or otherwise known as the TM680 keyboard. Now, I wanted to include this keyboard on this list because first off, it comes at an amazing price point at $80 for the bare bones kit, and secondly, it's just a great beginner's keyboard with a knob in a 65% layout. Now, some other features that it does have are it's got a hot swappable PCB, it's got multiple colors to choose from, and also a wireless Bluetooth option if you'd like to pay a bit more for that. Now, once you add some Gateron yellows and then some cheap PBT keycaps, you've got a keyboard that gives gaming keyboards a run for their money. Now, what I also found really interesting about this keyboard is that if you go on Reddit or YouTube, there's a lot of coverage about this keyboard because it comes at such a great budget price point. And yeah, just go look for those for a ton of inspiration. Alrighty, at number 2, we've got the 7B, and closely attached to it, the reselling phenomenon. Well, first off, the 7B. This is an incredibly elegant board and arguably one of the best looking keyboards of 2021. Now, because the 7B was only available for group buy back in 2020, it meant that a lot of the newcomers into the hobby in 2021 weren't able to get their hands directly on it. And compounded with the fact that they mentioned that the 7V was not going to be up for another group buy for at least a while, it meant that everyone had to really rush to the aftermarket if they wanted to get it. And now, because of that, I think the 7V really kicked off the reselling frenzy last year. And if you go through Reddit itself and scroll through, there's going to be so many posts for people asking to buy or sell the 7V. Now, I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but basically the secondary market exists simply because there's a difference in supply and demand. It's going to be, someone who wants to sell their keyboard, and if there's someone happy to buy it for that price, reselling is going to happen. Now, what I do want to actually mention is the fact that there are so many good keyboards that are currently being manufactured. If anything, I think there'll be actually an excess of high-end keyboards, and we'll see that because high-end boards will be continually released throughout this year, but also the keyboards that have been purchased last year will start delivering this year. So just be patient, because there'll eventually be a keyboard that'll roll around that you'll like and you'll have the chance to buy as well. And last but not least, number 1, which is mods. So mods or modifications are one of the most exciting and rewarding parts of the mechanical keyboard hobby. Yes, it can be really time consuming to be going through each individual part of a keyboard and modifying that from, the stabilizers to gluing the switches and then putting like some foam in the case or foam between the plate and the PCB. But at the end of the day, we do it because we want the final result to be fully worth it. So in 2021, we saw a whole new range of modifications come into the space, and I just wanted to run through them real quick. And now, first off, we have the PE foam mod, polyethylene foam mod. And what this is a very simple modification that was inspired originally by the Jelly Epoch. And it's a very thin layer of PE foam, only about 0.5 to 1 millimeter thick, that's being placed directly above the PCB, or if you see it the other way, under the switches. And now what this modification does for a keyboard is it really brings out a whole new sound signature. The result is a bit of a mix between like a creamy and popping sound signature, and it's something that really hasn't been seen much at all before the PE foam mod came out. Now next is the tape mod, and what this is an incredibly simple and affordable modification, and what it involves is simply taking some painter's tape or masking tape and applying that to the bottom of the keyboard's PCB, and the result is somewhat of a lowered, deeper sound signature. Now there are some other tapes that you can try on top of that masking tape, and I've gone through a few of them myself, so I'll link that video below. But overall, the tape mod is just such a convenient and affordable modification that I think everyone should just give it a go. And now lastly, there have also been a variety of stabilizer mods that I just list out quickly, which are the Holy mod, Clear Tape mod, and EPSI mod, and that's in addition to applying your regular lubricant on the wires and the housing. And now if you're interested in doing any of these mods for your keyboard, I'm just going to include them below, and these will really help improve the sound of your keyboard immediately. And that's it. That's my top 10 for keyboard moments in Keyboard Rewind for 2021. If you guys enjoyed the video, click that subscribe button down below and actually let me know what part of the keyboard hobby you guys most identified with or just simply enjoyed in 2021. I'm looking super forward to this new chapter of the KEEB journey in 2022, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Laters.